It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it was a pleasure to visit your school this morning and see you in action. So I feel like this is now karma. You get to watch me in action now, having me been in your classroom. So I wanted to start by saying congratulations to you all. Firstly, for making it here. So it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, and you're here, committed to your professional learning, and I wanted to acknowledge that because that's not a choice everybody would have made, and I really honour that. And being here in your country for the last 2 days only, 2.5 days, I feel so humbled actually with what you as a movement of people are doing to make the change that you believe in. And as I've been here and understood more about the context and the particular challenges and opportunities here, I feel all the more inspired by you and what you're doing. So I really want to say congratulations to you for being here, for being part of the positive change for the future of Hong Kong and the future of the world, because it is only through changing our education system and the experiences that our young people have that change will happen, and you are the people doing that now. And as Ada said, you're not the principals yet, but maybe you will be. And yeah, congratulations for being brave and tenacious. I love that word, tenacious. Does everyone know what that means? Yeah, your English is so amazing. But tenacious has a particular meaning of being kind of canny and a bit wily, a bit like a fox. You have to be cunning to make change. You know, tenacious, and you also have to be determined and not give up, because there's many, many barriers and challenges. So I acknowledge your tenacity and your bravery. If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. I think Einstein said, didn't he, the definition of madness is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So, whoops, you fell over then. What does that mean for you? So I saw lots of nods. So this is really an opportunity to get into your core motivation. This is about change. So off you go. In your tables, you might want to split the 2 and a 3. Couple of minutes. What does this immediately bring up for you when I put that word up there? If we always do what we've always done, we will always get what we've always got. So a couple of minutes to discuss what comes up for you on your tables. So really, this gets to the heart of change. And this program, this room full of people, is oriented towards change. And let's keep coming back to that and keep remembering why we're doing this, because it's hard and it's complex, yeah? But I love that motto. Let's keep remembering it. So this is a little bit of revision, and then I'm going to ask you to do another reflection exercise about this idea of wicked problems. And I sort of alluded to that when I was talking about the interdisciplinary nature of problems. But wicked problems is a way of thinking about a particular set of problems in our world which are wicked as opposed to tame. So a tame problem is where it may be complicated, but that we can come up with a solution which is likely to be successful. Whereas wicked problems, which is the sort of problems that you're working on in terms of working in schools, have these particular features. And this comes from a whole academic field of study around complexity theory and systems thinking, which have kind of this definition. So when we think about trying to change the education system, this is definitely a wicked problem. And they have these features. They're not formulaic. They're not easily solved. They don't have a right or wrong answer. They don't have immediate solutions which can be tested or that would be applicable. We might disagree with this in terms of we can create prototypes. Can't be studied through trial and error. Don't have an end to the number of solutions or approaches. In other words, there's a huge number of possible solutions, are unique, aren't solely logical, and can always be described as a symptom of other problems. So we think about problems in the school system, we can say that the outcomes of the school system are a part of other wider social problems about youth violence or disengagement or crime or health inequity or ... unemployment. So that's a bit depressing, isn't it? But the reason I put that in there is to revisit some of the learning I know you've done through the program around iterative design and design thinking methodologies, because that's why these methods are so important in these complex environments with wicked problems. So in other words, we can't just, I'll give my example of a mushroom, okay? So a mushroom as in a fungus. I use that example because my younger daughter, who has autism, is obsessed with mushrooms. So I have mushrooms everywhere in my house. Thankfully not growing in the walls. But so sometimes when people come to Surrey Square or they come to one of the schools, they see some amazing practice. And I think of that like a beautiful mushroom, yeah? And people say, oh, I want that mushroom. I want that practice. And they want to kind of pick the mushroom, or they want me to tell them how to make a mushroom grow in their context. And if you know, and it's like, if you know anything about mushrooms, how they grow is a very complex kind of ecosystemic set of circumstances, which is partly to do with the spores, but it's to do with the mycelium, the connective tissue, the connective sort of roots, they're not quite roots, that grow under the earth, and they connect into the soil, they connect into the trees, they have co-relationships with certain trees, and there's particular circumstances that allows that mushroom to flourish. So without making it seem impossible, we can learn things about the mushroom, but we can't just pick it up and plant it somewhere else. And that's really what complexity, the wicked problem idea, is kind of highlighting. So what we can do is use these types of methodologies. Now I know you've done the double diamond, which I'll show you in a second, but just to say there's many different structures to this kind of user-centered design or iterative design. And so just for your interest, there's a few different examples there. They have a similar pattern represented in different ways. So how do we diverge? How do we look outwards to learn from what other people are doing, from what the research says, what the evidence says, and then how do we bring that back together to make meaning in our own context? How do we then diverge and converge, which is really about prototyping and testing. So just for interest, really, a couple of different models. And to say, obviously, you'll have the slides, so you can follow up any of those. Sometimes I think just visually, different things can appeal to us. So you may find your own, which one works for you or works with your teams. But I think this is the model that maybe looks more familiar to you in terms of the double diamond, with those stages of really, importantly, starting with the problem. What is it? What is the problem we're solving for? Whether it's the outcomes that we don't like, whether it's the unintended toxic consequences of high-stakes testing, if it's suicide rate, if it's youth violence, what are the problems that we're solving for? And then this process of exploring, learning, shaping, and then the prototype phase here, develop or prototype, and testing. So a kind of reminder of some of the input I know that you've had over time. And for me, one of the most critical and often overlooked skills and disciplines in using these methodologies is the back-in bits of it, which is the evaluating, the understanding, the reflecting. So we test something. How carefully do we reflect on what happened? what I find is most innovators, they're very excited about the idea, and they're less excited about finding out how good their idea actually was in practice. Okay, so I wanted to take a moment to emphasize this. So how we reflect, evaluate, and learn is so critical to working in these ways. And that's, I guess, one big insight from working with a lot of innovators in education is very often they're not as obsessed with finding out how well it went as they were with their brilliant idea in the first place. Yeah? So, it's a kind of, I feel like I'm giving you a very teacherly lesson, like, do your homework, remember? So, to get us to reflect on that, again, inviting you to reflect. Some of you in cohort 8, this is very live because you're just doing your prototypes now. Some of you, it's a few years ago. Hopefully, some of these practices are embedded, these methodology processes are embedded. So just take a moment to reflect on this point in particular. So in your own work, whether it was to do with your prototype project that you did as part of the program or something else you've been working on, just really take the time to think about where you've been practicing this muscle, this dance move in our repertoire of things that we do, of where we're really taking the time to reflect, evaluate, and capture the learning. And a couple of scaffold questions there to help you think about it. If you were to be a very clever, smart Alec, you'd say, well, Liz, I'm doing it now, because, of course, I'm inviting you to do a reflection activity. But yeah, what was the process? How did you think about it? Who else was involved? And really powerful, be lovely to hear if there's a couple of examples in the room where you were doing something, a prototype, and then the learning highlighted some challenges or some opportunities to tweak it, and then you adapted it and you put that into practice. So you integrated the learning into what you then did next. So it could be on a big level, it could be in your classroom level, just to invite you to think about when you were practicing that skill. Make sense? Yeah, I know that's quite a hard question. I shouldn't have said that. It is one of the less sexy bits. Okay, so I'm making you do unsexy things on a Friday night. I just said sexy 3 times. Ah! Right, go before I say it again. Yeah, challenging power. Partly what you're doing, you're challenging people's self-interest, people who've maybe been doing it for a long time, a certain way, and then you're saying, I don't think that's working. This is not comfortable. Yeah? This is challenging. Do you have this expression, the grit in the oyster? I don't know if you know, did you have that saying? But like, you are disrupting the status quo. You're interrupting the way things have been done. So this is not always going to be greeted with a bunch of flowers from your colleagues or your principals, is it? Of course. So this is why I was talking about tenacity and bravery. So I was really thinking in preparing this session, most of my work now, I work with principals or people working in the system. And really working with Marco and thinking about this program is so amazing, empowering you as teachers to be the change, in the system, at the front line. So I was really thinking about what it must be like for you, trying to be this change, trying to make this change in your position, which is different. A principal has different motivations, different opportunities, but you are in the classroom doing this. So I've got 2 different models that I hope are an offering. So they hopefully will be new to you, and I hope will give you a way of thinking about your work and perhaps having some new insights. Why did I put this here? Well, because it's relevant. So this goes right back to the vulnerability point and us being willing to be learners. And I guess one of the things that makes it challenging for you is maybe superhero leadership above you in the organization, by which I mean principals who feel they have to be right, who have to have the answers, who have to be the person in the spotlight. Yeah? So that's something to be aware of, is how do we work around that, and also that we don't end up, or you don't end up, feeling you have to be the superheroes and always have the answers. Okay, so when we go back to design thinking, you know, these examples of being reflective, this is about not having the answer, but working together to find potential solutions and test them out. So there's no place for superheroes in these ways of working. We don't know the answer, but what we're doing is really asking good questions. We're saying, right, we're going to really look at the reality and ask important questions. And then we're going to go through a process of discovery, and we're going to come up with a hypothesis. And we're going to test it. We've got an idea about something up. This is not superhero leadership. Yeah? This is really important. And I put this in very briefly to say, this is some of you I know heard me say this before, but this is the front page of one of the education newspapers in England, and this devastated school leader is me. So this is a new school that I opened, a government school, which we opened doing the IB, and after 4 years, for complicated political reasons, I was told we had to close the school because we never got a permanent building. We were in temporary buildings. And so the reason I just briefly put that in there's lots of things to unpack about vulnerability, but really as an innovator and as a change maker, we also have to acknowledge that not everything goes right. Not everything works. And when we have to also talk about the things that don't work out, and we have to learn from them. Because if we're not failing, that means we're not trying something different. So things not working is a part of being an innovator, and we have to get comfortable with that to some degree. Of course, we want things to be successful, but it doesn't always happen. So these are two different models. This is the first one. Anybody know this already? Oh, few. Amazing. So Matthew Syed is a British psychologist and thinker, and I love this idea about rebel ideas, and you can see why this is going to appeal to you as innovators. So this is his model, and he says, here I am as an individual. I'm a perfectly smart, intellectual individual, and this rectangle is my organization or my team within the organization. I'm an intelligent individual, but this is an unintelligent team. Yeah? So in other words, we might call this groupthink. Yeah? Do you have that expression, groupthink? We all think the same. We're in an echo chamber. We get this, the algorithm on social media makes this happen, doesn't it? That we get the same information. So if we all look the same, sound the same, think the same, we are an unintelligent team because we don't have access to all this thinking over here. The organization is not benefiting from that. So what Syed says is we should be aiming for a model like this, a team of rebels or an intelligent team. So what we've got here is the rectangle, and you can think about how do we build the rectangle? What's this made up of? But here we've got individuals with different thinking. And you can start to reflect yourself in your own school, in your own team, where you might sit, and then maybe where some of your other colleagues might sit. Where's your principal in this model? Are you quite close to the principal? But is it other people in your department who are further away? And some of you may recognize this. So this is what he calls rebels without a cause, where the rectangle isn't sufficiently strong, or it's not sufficiently clear, and so there are people operating outside of the agreed expectations. Now, sometimes you might be doing this as an innovator because you're stepping outside. So there's implications for you to think about how you have the conversations with the principals and the senior team about maybe we can change the rectangle if the rectangle is too small. Yeah? What's the conversation? What's the scope to say, well, can we revisit that? Yeah? And recognizing also that if we're over here, just what that looks like to somebody that's over here. You know, so when we're thinking about the change journey and how we take people on the journey with us, that this person's map of the world, this person's worldview, is radically different, even if we are in the rectangle, but we're in different corners. We might be just about held together, but our worldview is very different. Our motivations, our self-interest are very different. So the other thing I wanted to really highlight, particularly for you in your position, is if in the team we have this diversity, we have different thinking, it's okay to be me, it's okay to have different ideas. If the leader is too dominant, too superhero, has to have the answers, we end up back here. So the team begins to parrot the dominant leader. Yeah? So when we talk about wanting agency, we want you to be empowered, to be change makers. We want you to bring your different thinking. This arrow, if the leaders are not enabling that, then the risk is that this dotted arrow is your agency disappearing. This is you being disempowered and, before our very eyes. And you become passive. So this position here, these people, just tell me what to do. There's no point having any ideas. Just tell me what to do and I'll just do it. They've given up, they resigned. And this is one of the reasons I think we have unhappy teachers in the profession. People don't want to do teaching because they see it, like Hugh said, like being like machines. Did you say that earlier about, someone said, you said, sorry, about teachers end up being like machines. This is teaching being reduced to implementing something that someone tells you to do. Yeah? So a chance to reflect on that. I've thrown out lots of questions there to give you a couple of moments to think about yourself and discuss on your tables. Yeah, how's that played out for you in your current environment or previous environments? Do you feel that you do have this? Do you feel that there is clarity and it's okay to be different? Have you experienced the power dynamics? So a few minutes to reflect on that. And then I've got my favorite ever tool to help you think about how to be really assertive when you need to be. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So I hope that's a helpful thing to reflect on now with your own work and as you develop as leaders. You know, as you develop and you're running teams more or you're running schools more, how are you really explicitly making clear what you care about, like your outcomes? What are we actually doing here? So for my organisation, we know we're focused on head, heart and hand. Yeah? And we have our values, which are be authentic, be brave, be curious, be connected. Those are our 4 values. That's what we stand for. So we have a way of holding ourselves to account. But we also, as leaders, have to make sure that we counter this effect, that we do the opposite. So if I'm the leader and we're having an ideation session, yeah, I have to say so strongly, I know this is my idea, and I want to hear your idea, and I want to hear your idea. And we're going to look at those honestly and make a decision together. I have to say that to give the psychological safety and to show that it's worth this person opening their mouth and using their brain. And I'm not just going to say, oh, actually, we're going to do my idea. Okay, so as leaders, we have responsibilities. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, I've flashed it about 5 times, so you're going to actually get to see it, is my favorite model of all time. And I love models. I've got about 30 that I use all the time. So this is like high stakes. I know it's like Friday night, but wait for it, drum roll. It's called the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Instrument Mode, which is the most unsexy title. I've now said sexy 5 times. I've just said it again. The best thing about this, I thought it was by one person called Thomas Kilmann. It's actually by 2 people called somebody Thomas and somebody Kilmann. But this is a model about conflict, and look at his name, Kilmann. I mean, I love that. We call that nominative determinism. You know when you have like Mr. Baker, Mr. Bread the baker, then Mr. Kilmann, the man who made a model about conflict. Anyway, I think that's hilarious, but obviously maybe my sense of humour is a bit sad. So this tool, just before I show it to you, I put these warnings here, because often people look at this and say, oh, I'm this type of person. It's not a personality type. It's really unhelpful in general to think of ourselves as a type of person. Okay, this is contextual, it's behavioural, it changes over time. Okay, so when we start identifying traits at an identity that, oh, I'm just a quiet person, well then it becomes hard for us to change. So that's a thing to remember. You know, it's just a behaviour thing we can change. So, this is it. Isn't that exciting? So, I'll try and explain why it's so exciting. So, on this model, we've got these 2 axes. So, on this axis, this says how assertive we're going to be about the position. So, we're going to think of a disagreement. I'm going to make up the disagreement with Marco. This is the disagreement. Marco is going to say, he doesn't have to say, Marco's saying, Liz, we really have to finish at 7 o'clock because everybody's tired and it's been a long week and we said we're going to finish at 7. And I'm going to say, Marco, I think we should keep going until we finished all the content because I've come all the way from the UK and these people are desperate. They're hanging on my every word. They don't want to go home. Okay, so that's the conflict, okay? So this model says how much, when we disagree or we have a different opinion, how much do we keep asserting our own position? And on this axis, how cooperative are we with the other person? Okay, so in mine and Marco's conflict situation, we can take the competing position, okay, and we can overlay the language structures. So competing is a but situation. So that sounds like this. So Marco, I know you think we should finish at 7 o'clock, but I think we should keep going until we finish all the content. And then I understand where you're coming from. That's beautiful. And I'm going to come back to you with all due respect, Marco. However, which is a posh but, yeah? I think we should keep going. So we could carry on all night, right? And what's going to happen in a competition is the person with the most power is going to win, most likely. Now, we could have a debate about who's got more power in this situation at this moment, but whatever. Marco may just say, look, Liz, I'm going to call it, we're going to stop at 7. And he ultimately employed me to be here, so power! So in which case, I will stop asserting myself, and I could choose to then be cooperative. So accommodate, okay? So all of these things are a good thing in the right moment, all right? So if Marco says, Liz, he's giving me his look, I'm like, okay, cool. And then I can say, cool, and I can accommodate in a positive way and say, no, that's fine, we'll finish at 7. You're all going, phew. But I can also accommodate if I always have to defer. In other words, if we're going, sorry. If this is all, this is literally this happening. This dotted line is what happens when when this person's competing, yeah, and I'm having to accommodate, yeah, that is literally what's happening. So if that's always what happens, I become passive, and I can be very passive-aggressive in how I'm responding. Which way am I going now? Making you feel seasick, making myself feel seasick. Where am I? Come back. So this can be a very passive, negative. Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah? So you're all very smart, so you've got there quickly. Now we can avoid the conflict. So between me and Marco, let's just see how we get on. Okay? And I hear over here, you've been avoiding, in a way. You were like, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm not going to make a big, conflict. I'm just going to get on with it outside the box and avoid having the conflict, but follow my heart. Yeah? So that's your strategy. And, Queen Elizabeth, there's a famous quote, to be a bit like, I don't know if I should quote Queen Elizabeth, but there's this wonderful quote she says about religious tolerance. Let us not make windows into men's souls, she said, which is what made me think of when you said that thing. So this was about the Catholic Protestant thing in Tudor England, but let us not make windows into men's souls. So in other words, believe what you believe, and your heart is telling you. So avoidance, good thing. Pick your battles. Yeah? So sometimes strategically for you, picking your battles is going to be a smart thing to do. Compromising is compromising. You understand that. Okay? It's a good thing to do to compromise sometimes. However, if we're always compromising, yeah? If we're always compromising, we're never going to reach our goals. Well, we reach halfway to our goals if we always compromise. So where are the places where you really want to compete? Where you say, I really want us to go for this. I'm going to fight for this thing. I'm willing to compromise on some things. Where do I want to fight? Now, the last position is this collaborative position. Now, this is not generally saying be collaborative. This is collaborating about the fact we have a different point of view. Okay, so that's why it's an and structure. So that sounds like this. Marco, I know you think we should finish at 7 o'clock, and I think we should keep going until we finished all the content. So what should we do? Okay. So can you feel what a different position that is? So I'm fully acknowledging Marco's position, and I'm acknowledging the fact that I think something different. I'm naming it. I'm making it explicit. I'm surfacing the fact that we disagree. And then I'm making it a shared endeavor to figure out how we solve it. What should we do? And when we get into that position, very often it's a very creative position. So often we hear new ideas. Oh, well, we could do this. And then very often what happens is we actually listen to each other more. So, well, just tell me more about why it's so important that we finish at 7 o'clock. And Marco says, well, actually, there's a bus strike, and it's going to start at 7:30, and if we don't leave, everyone's going to get stuck, or whatever. There could be some other contextual information, and then he might listen to me and say, oh, I didn't realize, Liz, you saved the best bit for last, and they're going to miss it if we blah, 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 okay? So it gives us a different way to react. So I felt for you in your position to be aware of this model, to think about where you're being assertive, where you want to compete, yeah? And to be very intentional about that may be helpful for you. And to notice that the power dynamics, that in many situations, it may be that you're having to accommodate, and also to notice that. So how you can find the spaces maybe where you can assert yourself more. Good, so I really encourage you to use that model. I'm a big fan of printing these things out. You know, if you can put them, even if you have them small and stuck in your workbook or your notebook, just to remind you, you know, and when things are happening in your school, to be analysing it, reflecting it in that way. What is going on and how might I accommodate? Okay? Now, joking aside about the time we're going to finish, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to skip the next bit, which is some sharing of some pedagogy from my schools. So I'm sorry it's going to make you feel a bit seasick, but I just suppose to make the point for those of you that haven't visited and don't know anything about me and us, that we've asked ourselves some big, hairy, hard questions about what school should be like. And when you do that over time, and I've been doing it for 20 years as a principal and executive leader, you get different answers. So, just to briefly absorb that, going back, this is our rectangle for one of the skulls. It's a circle, but that's the rectangle. This is what success for the school looks like. It's about knowledge, what we call wisdom and expertise, but it's about all those other things too. And there are different examples of pedagogies which bring those things to life, how we think about well-being, how we use journaling, our beautiful core values. I couldn't stop myself, Marco. I'm going to finish on time. Our beautiful core values. We don't have rules in the school. We have the values which embody the qualities we want the young people to develop. So here is my favourite, Percy perseverance. So Percy embodies the qualities. He has a flag which says give it a go, because he's always up for giving it a go, even when it's hard or he's not sure. He's got his juicy mistakes, because he knows that mistakes help him learn. And he's got his sash with little badges to acknowledge all the small steps on his route to success. Now, they have a big presence in the school. We have puppets of each of them so that they have a physical embodiment and presence in the school. We have stickers that says the name of it. So Percy says, well done, but with the focus on oracy. Ask me why. So encouraging a dialogue between the student and the adult about why they showed it. We have postcards, etc. So very embedded into school life. Very briefly, thinking about rethinking assessment. When we care about a broader range of skills and dispositions, we need to understand how effectively we're teaching those. So we do use learner profiles. We can have a whole other session about learner profiles. And this is an example of a student-led conference. So a traditional teacher-parent meeting is flipped, and the student is leading that and talking to their parents and their teachers about their learning, rather than the teacher talking to their parents. And very briefly, lastly, about how do we support young people to take action. Building civic action projects under a project-based learning methodology is a huge part of what we do, and lots of stories that I can tell you about that. So a real gallop, but just a flavour of some of the different pedagogies that you can develop when you ask different questions.